Oh, right. What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with MattyB program here on the edge of Philly Sports with your boy, the infamous MattyB, Matt Penarchek. It is Monday, April the 29th, 2024. And once again, I'm happy to be here to help kick off your Philadelphia Sports Week. And we got a lot to talk about, as usual, as per usual. We have a lot to talk about tonight. We have a little special thing here on the show in a little bit, about 5 minutes or so. We're going to run a clip, a segment from the Birds Blast. That's right, my boy Kyle Quinn joined me yesterday, and we sat down and we talked some Eagles draft. We talked some Eagles free agency. We kind of cut that up a little bit. And then we're also going to dig into some Phillies and dig into some Flyers, too. I'll even talk Sixers if you want to, but obviously you already know my stance on that. But if you want to talk Sixers, I definitely will. But obviously the big story in town this week this past weekend, has been the completion of the 2024 NFL Draft. And yet again, St. Howie hit a home run, right? Everybody out there is singing the praises yet again of Howie Roseman's masterful drafting ability. And of course, I have to be the constant voice of reason. I have to be the constant pump brakes of your excitement. And I hate being that guy. I really do. And I take a lot of heat for it. I've been accused of being a non-Eagle fan. I've been accused of being a closet Dallas Cowboy fan. I've been censored. That's right. How dare somebody censor me? But I've been censored on this network. EOP. By some draft nerd. Censored me. Did I mention I got censored? And but I have to be that voice of reason. It's not that I want to be. I feel it my responsibility to be. Because as much as I feel that the Philadelphia Eagles did okay drafting players this weekend, we don't know what we got. And we're not going to know what we got for about at least 3 years, because we do this dance every year. We go down this road every April about how well the Eagles have drafted. I heard it last year with Jalen Carter. I heard it the year before that with Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. But where are we at with those players right now? We're still waiting to see. So to sit here and once again, elevate this fraudulent GM, and again, I do have my thing, but to elevate this man to any sort of like sainthood because of what he did, what he potentially did, without really knowing how any of these players are going to translate to a football field is ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. And I got to be that voice of reason, man. I got to be that yang to the yin. But that's okay, because that's what I do. And I'm happy to do that. So we're going to get into some Eagle draft talk. We're going to get into some Eagle free agency talk with the Birds Blast segment. For those of you who don't know what the Birds Blast is, it is a show that I do every football season. And it is co-hosted by WIP's Kyle Quinn. Kyle and me, we talk Eagles. We preview Eagles football every week. We preview the games. We look back at the game that happened. And then we do that all season long. And then in the offseason, we come together a few times and do kind of a check-in show. We did one right at the end of the season after the Super Bowl. We did one yesterday, and then we'll do another one late August when we get ready to kind of ramp up the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles season. But I'm going to play that here in a minute. It's pre-recorded, so take that for what it is. But Kyle and me sat down yesterday for about an hour, and we talked in depth how we both felt the Eagles did in the draft. And you might be surprised at how I feel. You really might. But we're going to get into that. As I mentioned, we're going to talk some Phillies. Red hot fighting Phillies. Red hot. Just kind of knocking the cover off the ball, getting above average to stellar starting pitching. The bullpen has not been used much, which is a good thing. They're getting ready to wrap up April, sporting a 19-10 record. They started a 3-game set tonight in Anaheim against the Angels, which for those of you who track the Titans final, this is your lineup for the Titans final this week. That's right, me coming at you later tonight, like early tomorrow morning, and then on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning as well. And then Mike will take you on Wednesday for the afternoon game. So we got a lot going on here in the network, and I'm coming back from vacation, and I'm being thrown right back in the fire, but that's okay. That's what I love to do. But let's get this thing going. Let's get this party started as we do every week, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. And I went way, way back to the year 1989 for this one. On April the 29th, 1989, the Flyers, that's right, your Philadelphia Flyers, were actually in the playoffs then. They defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 7 of the Patrick Division Finals. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is it a noteworthy event? Did they come back in quadruple overtime to win the game? No, they did not. They were at one point trailing in the series 3-1, and were able to battle back and win in Game 7. And then they moved on to the Montreal Canadiens in the Wales Conference Finals before losing. And that was the infamous Chris Chelios, Brian Propp, Ron Hextall thing, where Chelios cheap shot at Propp. I think it was like Game 2 or 3. And then Hextall, when Game 6 was pretty much out of reach for the Flyers, went after Chelios and ended up getting suspended for like 20 games to start the following season. Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up was because that was it for the Flyers. If you guys remember back then, that was their swan song when it came to those players of the 1980s. The Brian Propps, the Dave Poulins, the Mark Howells, and the Tim Kerrs, and such. They wouldn't make the playoffs for 5 more years after that. It was the end of the era for those guys. And it wasn't until Eric Lindros came around about 3 years later, the Flyers began to slowly kind of put things back together again. And it reminded me a lot of where we kind of might be with the Flyers today. Now, granted, we are in a better position than they were in 1989 at this point, because 89 was the crescendo. And then after that, it fell apart. Now we've already fallen apart. We're putting it all back together. But yeah, I just felt that was poignant as we look at the Flyers today. So that was your day in Philadelphia sports history. The Flyers defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 7 of the Patrick Division Finals after coming back 3-1 and winning the series before eventually falling to the Montreal Canadiens in the following round. And that segment here, or that little bit here on the show, was brought to you by the good folks over at the Cherry Injury Law Group. Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 for all your workers' compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, and criminal law. Give Dave a call at 610-565-0300 or look him up on that Google machine, www.cherryinjurylaw.com. So, all right, let's move on to the Birds, and let's move on to our Birds Blast segment here on EOP. Again, my co-host of the Birds Blast is Kyle Quinn. Joined me yesterday for about an hour, 40 minutes or so, and I'm going to play this in its entirety for you, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about it, maybe kind of put a bow on it before moving on to the Phillies and Flyers. So here's Kyle Quinn and me on the Birds Blast yesterday. All right, it is that special time of the year because we're back with Kyle Quinn in the Birds Blast, and that means we're one step closer to the beginning of the football season. Kyle, well, last time we spoke was in February, and we made a promise to each other we'd come back right after the Eagles draft, kind of recap free agency and the draft. Let's do that now. But Kyle, how you been? How's the offseason been treating you? And we're getting that much closer to the start of the season.
I know I'm already ready for the start of football, man. But I've been good, Matt. Good to see your shining face again after so long.
Yeah, it's been a few months, but a lot has happened, Kyle. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into this because the last time we spoke was the dawn of the Kansas City Chief dynasty. We went over the disaster that was the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. We put a ribbon on that, put a bow on that, and now we're moving forward. But the bad news kept going for the Eagles because not long after, maybe a little bit longer than a lot of people wanted to wait for it, but Jason Kelce, finally, the inevitable happened. He retired. He ended an era. He ended a career that will no doubtly put him in the Eagles Hall of Fame and should put him in Canton.
Yeah.
Kyle, how is your feelings about the Jason Kelce situation? One, obviously, he's an all-time Eagle. You can't replace him. Was this the right move, you think, for Kelce? And what do you think prompted him to do this?
Well, I it's not for me to judge whether it was the right move for him. Obviously, I think the word you described to use it was perfect, inevitable. Like you kind of knew that this was coming. The Eagles seemingly have been preparing for it for a few years now. They drafted Landon Dickerson with the thought that he could maybe be a center one day. He's the guard now, but then they did the same thing with Cam Jurgens. And he looks like he's going to slide right into center. So it wasn't something that was totally unexpected. Obviously, he's one of their best players on the team. So they're going to miss him. No matter what you think about Cam Jurgens, it's going to be tough to recoup from that loss of Jason Kelce. But I'm happy for him. Seems like he's happy with his decision, so I'm happy with it too.
Now, Kyle, let's talk about Cam Jurgens, and I guess he is the de facto replacement right now here in late April. It could change, but right now it's Cam Jurgens. Or really, this question has anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Really, it's to anybody. How unfair, Kyle, would it be to whoever replaces Jason Kelce that we try to compare him to Jason Kelce? And do you think that this fan base, as rational as they are, will do that?
Yeah, well, I'm sure everyone will. And I guess what I'd say about it is that the Eagles are sort of putting him in position where he needs to live up to at least what Jason Kelce was able to do. The Eagles they're making it pretty clear, like they're going for it this year. They want to try and win big and win the Super Bowl this year. So Cam Jurgens has to play like a Super Bowl level center. So he doesn't have to be, Eagles legend status Jason Kelce, but he certainly needs to be good enough to step into that role and for the Eagles offense not to miss a beat, because of him replacing Jason Kelce. So it's tough for me to say that the expectations are unfair. The expectations are going to be what they are. And like you said, with this fan base the way they are, everyone's going to sort of expect the offense to not miss a beat. And I don't think that's totally unfair to expect of Cam Jurgens.
I will see, because I think it would be totally unfair for anybody to be compared to what Jason Kelce brought to this team, both the tangible, what we saw every day, and the intangible, what was happening in that locker room that none of us really knew about, that now is not there. And I think it was pretty substantial in terms of the leadership role. And that brings me to the other two veteran Eagles that were essentially on their way out the door, or the rumors were floating around that they were going to leave. Brandon Graham decided, you know what, he isn't going to retire quite yet. He's going to return for a final season to kind of do a victory lap, I guess, throughout his career. I definitely think this is a pretty good decision, not necessarily for the tangible, but for the intangible, what Brandon Graham brings. And then his counterpart, Fletcher Cox, well, Fletcher went down the same road Jason Kelce did and decided to retire. Let's talk about the Brandon Graham decision first. How do you feel about it? Is this something that the Eagles, as you mentioned, are all in for winning a Super Bowl? Is this something that they had to do, you think, or is this something that they just kind of left up to the player to make that decision for?
Well, they weren't going to let Brandon Graham go play for another team, wear another uniform in his final year, right? That just wouldn't be right. But, obviously the Eagles had plenty of decisions to make regarding who should be on the roster and on a defense that totally fell apart at the end of the season. Now, I think the Brandon Graham signing, obviously it's not hindering their cap space. That didn't cause any issues with what they were able to do. That definitely had nothing to do with why. I'm sure we'll get to him in a second. The guy, the best player on the defense, isn't here anymore. Yeah. But he's kind of here just to, just I think Brandon Graham's sort of here to just finish out the career the way that Brian Dawkins should have. Hopefully he can sort of share some of that leadership, maybe pass some stuff on to Nolan Smith. I mean, a young guy who I think's gotten a lot of comparisons to Brandon Graham in the past, but hopefully Brandon Graham can help him step up, become the player that he's meant to be, and who knows, maybe even a leader of the team.
And then, of course, Fletcher deciding he was going to hang it up. This is an interesting move because Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce shared the fields together for really a very long time. Both of them are, only ever played for the Eagles. I didn't see much. I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't fanfare for saying goodbye to Fletcher, but obviously the Jason Kelce decision was a little bit more impactful for everything that Jason kind of stood for and what he meant for this team. Again, not to say that Fletcher Cox was anything less than that, but how significant is the Fletcher Cox retirement going to be from a tangible standpoint, what he brought to the field?
Well, it's going to be interesting because he was one of their better defensive defensive players all of last year. I know he kind of had a down year the year before, and everyone was wondering, why do we keep giving this guy some money? But Fletcher Cox brought a lot to the field. And even though he was an older guy, he helped out a lot with, I think, masking some of the deficiencies that Jordan Davis had when he was really not conditioned enough to stay on the field for a long period of time. And then Jalen Carter, who kind of seemingly hit a rookie wall at the end of the season, you sort of saw Fletcher Cox take up for those guys a little bit. So he'll be missed for sure, but it's really going to come down to whether those two guys that I mentioned are able to step up in his absence.
Now, the last point I want to talk about those three, and we'll move on to free agency and everything that's happened. Players have gone and come. You have three captains there. You have Fletcher, Brandon, and Jason. You have two all-time Eagles. You actually have three all-time Eagles, and all three of them, you're going to lose two of them. What does the departure of that veteran leadership Something that I think this team is in very short supply of. They were in short supply of it last year. I think they had the wrong leaders last year. Now we subtract two major ones from that. How significant do you think that's going to be for Nick Sirianni trying to keep this thing together?
Yeah, well, it's very significant. Obviously, it means that, now with those guys gone, it means that the guys that are supposed to be the leaders of this team, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, they put a C on Darius Slay's chest for God knows what reason, but he needs to be a leader. Nick Sirianni, you said it. I mean, he's not usually like fearless leader type guy where you look at him and he's always got the same face on, sort of like Jalen Hurts. So I don't know. It's going to come down to whether those guys are able to step up in that way or not. And then, maybe some of the younger guys that are, no longer rookies, but now kind of have to take up way bigger roles in Kelsey's absence, not necessarily Cam Jurgens per se, but some of the young guys who are brought here, not only for their skill, but for their leadership abilities. It's time for those guys to step up too.
Yeah, it most definitely is. And you mentioned Nick Sirianni, and here's a point about Nick Sirianni. I don't know if you've noticed him lately, Kyle. Does it look like, or am I just kind of going in a shot in the dark here? Why does he look like he just woke up? Have you noticed that?
Probably did just wake up. Yeah, he's a strange dude. And there's one thing I will just say about Nick Sirianni is, as crazy as he can be, I think he puts a lot of time and effort into what he does. So you can sort of see that wearing on him a little bit. I remember it was like the end of the season press conference. I was like, this dude needs a day off. Yeah.
Yeah. He needs to be locked in a room in the dark. Yeah, yes. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, Kyle, let's get into the free agency comings and the goings. Let's talk about current Eagle free agents that were not tendered contracts by the Eagles, and I think still currently do not have deals. Stop me when you get to somebody that's significant here, but linebacker Sean Bradley, Zach Cunningham, safety Justin Evans, tackle Roderick Johnson, Julio Jones, Shaquille Leonard, Rashad Penny, Bradley Roby, Quez Watkins, and Olamide Zacharias are no longer Philadelphia Eagles and currently are no longer employed, as far as I know. Joining them on the outs are Kevin Byard, who did sign a 2-year deal with the Bears, tackle Jack Driscoll, who signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins. Marcus Mariota is now going to be backing up a very interesting Washington Commanders team, I think, next year. Nicholas Morrow is on his way to the Jets there. Is he going there? Yeah, he's going to the Bills. Sorry, he's going to the Bills on a 1-year deal. Sue Opeta, 1 year with the Buccaneers. Hassan Reddick, we're going to put him to the side for a second. Jack Stoll, 1-year deal with the Giants. And then DeAndre Swift, 3-year deal with the Bears, joining Quez Watkins, 1 year with the Steelers. And Zacharias did sign. He signed with the Commanders. So out of the free agents that you've lost, Kyle, who out of that group, with the exception of Hassan Reddick, does that anybody kind of move the needle for you?
Well, not necessarily. I would say that the Swift one would have, had the Eagles not replaced him with Saquon, who I'm sure we're also going to get to in just a minute.
Yeah.
But, no, honestly, beyond the Hassan Reddick one, everybody, a lot of those guys are defensive players. And you couldn't have left last season thinking that we need to go status quo on this defense. They needed a major overhaul, so it's good to see a lot of those guys move on.
Yeah, I agree. And the DeAndre Swift thing, and obviously we're going to get into Saquon right now, but DeAndre Swift, I think that's an interesting situation, and let's talk about it. Saquon Barkley, of course, the crown jewel of the Eagle free agency class, 3-year deal. Kyle, I know on this very same program, we have done this before. And I know last year we talked about this at pretty much the same time of the year when we were talking about last year's draft. We were both, Bijan Robinson was probably the name that I know I wanted the Eagles to go up and get last year. I honestly think a running back, though the position is not the same as it was, is still a valued position, especially for those first 5 years of a thoroughbred's career. Obviously, the Eagles didn't do that. And now the Eagles go out and they spend big money on a running back that's got some tread left on his tire. He's a difference maker. He's a game changer. I'll give you all that. But Kyle, for a team that doesn't run the football at all, and now again, this could signal a philosophy change for this team. I get it under Moore, but what is your take on the Saquon signing? I think you're pro it, but give me your full Kyle Quinn skinny on this.
Yeah, well, I obviously I love the idea that the Eagles went after and pursued a 3-down back, like a guy that he can be on the field at all times. He can be a workhorse. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can also pass protect. something that the Eagles desperately needed last year out of DeAndre Swift when they couldn't pick up a blitz to save their lives.
No.
To your point about them not running the ball, I think they're going to now with Kellen Moore. I mean, remember Kellen Moore is the guy that was feeding Zeke all those times when he was with Dallas. So if he has one of those kind of guys, I think he also likes to run multi-tight end sets. We'll see how much that changes, because they really only have Dallas Goedert right now. But when you do that, it almost helps. It's a little bit more of a power personnel where you can run the football a little bit more. And I think having Saquon Barkley here is going to help take some heat off of Jalen Hurts, going to take some heat off the rest of the guys. Teams might have to load up the box, which means that they're taking attention away from Goddard, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, et cetera, whoever the number 3 wide receiver is going to be, and even Jalen Hurts. So I'm definitely for the signing. Obviously, he has to stay healthy and he has to be productive, I would say, for 2 of the 3 years of his contract, because this is a move that the Eagles make when they're trying to win now. I mean, they pretty much told us everything we needed to know about their aspirations this season when they signed Saquon Barkley for a 3-year deal. They want to go win the Super Bowl. So I'm in. If you want to win the Super Bowl, you got to add weapons on offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned the health issue, and this was the biggest thing that a lot of Eagle fans gravitated right towards was, well, he's not in MetLife. He's not on that turf anymore. He's going to be okay. Life will be good. And the other thing was the offensive line, which, of course, is a much better product than he ever had in New York. I'll give you that. But the health issue, and so I went back and I looked over this. None of his injuries none of his sustainable injuries, to include the ACL, a couple of high ankle sprains, something that kept him out of games. None of those injuries occurred on MetLife turf. And I was like, I get what they're saying. And maybe that was just an injury waiting to happen. As I said, he's a game changer. Absolutely a game changer. But I have a tendency to think that so would have been DeAndre Swift if given the opportunity to be that game changer.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy into that. DeAndre Swift, I think, is a good player, explosive player, but I think when you're talking about in terms of like tiers, what a running back ceiling can give you, Saquon Barkley's is so much higher than DeAndre Swift. So, I mean, the guy was a number 3 overall pick, and not that I'm saying it was a smart pick by the Giants to take him, but he had that level of talent. DeAndre Swift, not as much. I just think if you had either guy's ceiling, you take Saquon Barkley's 10 times out of 10. Yeah,
as I said, I'm not going to sit here and like negate it. I think it's a good move, and they finally got a bell cow running back that we've been waiting for since, let's face it, since Shady left. And, perhaps now we can get maybe a more well-rounded offense out of him. I agree. Some of the other additions on the defensive side, Oren Burks, a 1-year deal. Zach Bond, another 1-year deal. Paris Campbell, wide receiver, a 1-year deal. Mr. C.J. Gardner-Johnson returns to the nest. Kyle, a 3-year deal. Let's stop the wheel there. There was a lot of bad blood seemingly coming out of town last year when he left, and now I guess everything is all hunky-dory. He's back. The defense was better with him here. Is this a matter of how we go into a safety blanket here, or is this a matter of how he maybe admitting he was wrong about letting him go? I mean, he has said as much that he was kind of wrong about letting him go. What is your take on this move, bringing that CJ DJJ back?
Yeah, well, it's a familiar player, a good player, a playmaker at a position of need. The Eagles needed safeties. I know everyone loves Reed Blankenship, but the Eagles needed an upgrade at the safety position. CJ Gardner-Johnson is that. And the thing that CJ brings, not besides his playmaking ability, besides the attitude, the guy he forced a lot of turnovers. It's something that the Eagles were missing in a huge way last season on the defense. I think even if say 5 out of those 20 million stops that the Eagles did not get at the end of the season on defense were turnovers.
5 out of the 20 million.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, maybe some games end a little bit differently if one of those turn into turnovers. Turnovers are a huge deal. The Eagles struggled to turn the ball over to an insane degree at the end of the season, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson brings that back. Characteristic of his, he doesn't often stay healthy. I think he's going to be another great signing.
Yeah, I listen. I think it's a no-brainer here. As you mentioned, the player is a comfortable player. He knows how the system is here. He knows how things are run with the Eagles. I don't think he should have left in the first place, but there's nothing we can do about that. Kyle, before we continue on to free agency, well, the Eagles, they jumped in the market and they made a trade. And one of the most, I think, aside the Jalen Hurts drafting in 2020 when they picked up Hurts, trading for Kenny Pickett from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kyle Quinn. Mm-hmm. I had to kind of do the double take, triple take, quadruple take to make sure I was looking at the right thing. Kyle, make sense of this for me, please.
Right. Well, the Eagles always want a strong quarterback room. I mean, I can make sense to it. About it to you this way: what's a better quarterback room? Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, and Tanner McKee, or Jalen Hurts, Kenny Pickett, Taylor McKee? Right. You got a former first round pick in Kenny Pickett. Like, look, think about it this way, Matt. How many
Mariota was a first round pick.
Yeah. How many quarterbacks went down last year to injury?
Yeah. No, I understand.
Like an insane amount. And the NFL is about to move to 18 games potentially. Jalen Hurts was banged up all last year. I know he didn't really miss time, but he missed time the year before. The most valuable thing you can have besides the starting quarterback, really, if you have all the other things, is a good backup quarterback. I know the Eagles were high on Kenny Pickett coming out. Remember that, the meme with Howie and the binoculars? That was him scouting Kenny Pickett. Yep. So it's a reunion in that sense. But the Eagles value having a strong quarterback room. I was saying for a while when before this went down that the Eagles should try and get Justin Fields here. Is sort of a similar thing. His value was decreasing around the league. Could have been had obviously for a later round pick, similar to the Kenny Pickett trade. Similar skill set to Jalen Hurts. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's a smart move for the Eagles trying to get a quality backup quarterback in here. It always has been. I mean, we are the team, Matt, that won our only Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. So if anyone should know the importance of it, it's us.
I don't know if Kenny Pickett's Nick Foles, but listen, Matt, I agree.
Matt, he's not Nick Foles, but he can win you a couple games, right? And a couple games like last year, think about it. Last year, the difference between the Eagles being the 2 seed and the Eagles being the 5 seed having to go to Tampa Bay was like 1 game, right? If they would have won 1 game later on in the season, right? So I'd say Jalen Hurts misses 2. Kenny Pickett needs to win 1. I would trust Kenny Pickett to win a game. Maybe if the rest of the things are going well around him, just hand it to Saquon a bunch of times. Having a good backup is very important.
Listen, I'm not going to discredit that. Absolutely. I've been on board with that backup as a positive thing probably since Andy Reid arrived way back when. I 100% agree, especially as you mentioned with the practices not being the way they are, spring training, preseason not being the way it is. These quarterbacks are not really getting hit until the season begins, and you never know what you're going to get there. I understand that. And I understand that Pickett became, he became expendable when they brought in Russell Wilson, which doesn't make any damn sense. But and I don't think they really paid too much for him. And I'm okay with it, but it was still kind of one of those like Kenny Pickett moves. I mean, was he a competent starter? Yeah, he was. Is he? Are we ready to? If say Jalen Hurts goes down for any kind of significant amount of time, are you going to feel trust? You going to trust Kenny Pickett to run you the rest of the way?
No, but I mean, what quarterback are you going to get in here that you do trust? If Jalen,
Foles.
These guys are backups, and Nick Foles is retired, Matt. So,
yeah, that's right.
You know how tough it is to find a quality backup in the NFL. If a quarterback goes down for an extended period of time, you probably just need to say you're screwed anyway. I mean,
I disagree. I totally disagree with that. But Kenny Pickett, it could be worse. Mariota did set the world on fire.
Who do you think would be better that they could get?
If somebody that we could have gotten, that would have been better. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I mean, I probably would have stuck around with Mariota. God, but he fell off a cliff though, man.
No. At least you can get a guy with upside.
Yeah, again, you're right. As I said, I'm not sitting here poo-pooing it. I'm not criticizing Howie for it, but it was like a real head scratching move. That's what the trade. It was
a shocker for sure. I didn't.
Yeah. All right, and they also they one-upped it. They decided to add another quarterback, Kyle, this time through free agency. Will Grier is now an Eagle, and so now we have a 4 quarterback room. Obviously, we're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks into the regular season. Is Tanner McKee the odd man out here, Kyle?
I don't know, Matt, but that is a juicy controversy that we're sitting on here. Tanner McKee or Will Grier, baby.
Matt Hennessy agreed to a 1-year deal with the Eagles from the Falcons. Then we got Bryce Huff, the linebacker, edge rusher, hybrid, 3-year deal. We signed him away from the New York Jets. And then, of course, the Hassan Reddick thing happened. Essentially, Reddick, who was traded to the Jets, basically kind of worked out that we basically traded Huff for Reddick. Let's go into this move right here. I would have loved to have had Huff and Reddick. That would have been fun for at least 1 year. But you're right. I guess Reddick was not feeling that, and he wasn't going to play here on that 1-year deal. But how do you like the move here, first bringing Huff in?
Yeah, well, I love the Huff signing. It's very similar to the value that the Eagles got, you hope, expect from Hassan Reddick when they got him a few years ago.
Yeah.
He was kind of in a weird situation where he was not highly valued across the league. A little bit different here with this guy being an undrafted free agent, Bryce Hoff, but the Eagles expect him to get similar production to Hassan Reddick, obviously, because they let Hassan Reddick walk out the door. But I mean, in terms of just the overall player they got with Bryce Hoff, I love having him here. He's a young kid. I think he was a beast in his limited time playing with the Jets, but he saw a double-digit sack. So hopefully, with more playing time comes more sacks. So that's all you're asking for out of this kid.
Now, as far as Hassan Reddick being moved to the Jets, not necessarily the haul everybody was expecting, but I think when you really kind of work it all through the wash, you got the Huff thing. You do really have to kind of factor that into this. I think you do. And I'm going to give Howie a pass on this. I really am. What did you think they got fair value for Reddick?
Oh no, I hate this on Reddick trade. I think it's one of the worst moves that Howie Roseman's made in a long time. And I don't agree with the idea of they basically got Huff for Reddick, because they didn't get Huff for Reddick. They could have had both Huff and Reddick. Instead, they have Huff and they have a future third-round pick, not even in this draft, which, and I get how he was upset when they asked if that was fair value, and you don't know. But I'm looking at this as a team that is going for a Super Bowl win this year and losing. I'm not in the interest of losing my best player on defense, and replacing him 1-for-1 with another guy that's, let's be honest about Bryce Huff. He's a question mark in replacing Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick was a surefire double-digit sack guy that you knew you had. And as we know this, as Eagles fans, the more depth on that defensive line, the better. The more guys you can have rotating, the better. And if Hassan Reddick's pissed off about having to share some snaps with Bryce Huff, I'm sorry, dude. You're under contract. You signed it. So I hated the Hassan Reddick trade. I would have much rather had Hassan Reddick and Bryce Huff than Hassan Reddick and a future third that can turn into a second. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care. I don't need that right now. I need Hassan Reddick. So I hated the move.
Wow, you're hearing this that wasn't me, folks, by the way. That was Kyle Quinn. Kyle, I've been under a lot of heat lately about my anti-Howie stuff. So
I'm sure
any kind of time I can, deflect is really good. All right, yeah, actually, Kyle, wow, all right, good stuff there. The Eagles also brought in the cornerback Tyler Hall, Devontae Parker, wide receiver, PJ Mustapher, defensive tackle, CJ Uzma. Well, I actually liked him when he came out. Tight end from the Jets, and then Devin White, I guess, who's the other significant move here, the linebacker from the Buccaneers. Let's talk about Devin White here, Kyle, in a position group that the Eagles don't seem to care about, and they demonstrated that again over the weekend. Is Devin White, does he move the needle for you, or is this just like Nick Morrow in a different body?
Well, he's a very high-risk, high-reward signing. He's not like Nick Morrow. He's got much better pedigree than Nick Morrow. When he's playing at his best, which he was not last year, to be very honest about that, he was probably playing at his worst last year. You have to hope that's just sort of an aberration, or could be another Shaquille Leonard type deal where we bring him in and he's just totally awful and you can't put him out there on the field. They're putting a lot of faith in him and Nakobe Dean, I would say. And I wouldn't be surprised if, with Vic Fangio running the type of defense he does, that they almost use Nolan Smith as a little bit more of a linebacker type player. Because he's a little bit small for a defensive end. And I don't know. I'll be curious to see how they use Nolan Smith. So I'm not really sure how I view the linebacker group. It really comes down to really whether or not Devin White can play or not. And you just kind of have to hope he's 2020 Devin White, not 2023 Devin White, which, if you do the math, 2023 is a little bit closer to now. So not the most encouraging thing there, Matt, but you just got to hope that he's kind of 2022 guy.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, because I wasn't really on for this trade or this move. Still wish you would have kept TJ Edwards. I don't know. I was still going back to that, and Kazir White. Why couldn't we have signed both of them to like a 3-year deal? That would have worked out well.
Would have liked one of them.
Yeah, we could have done that. All right. And then my final player let's talk about is the tight end CJ Uzma, who again, I liked him coming out of college. I don't know if he ever really got a fair shake up there with the quarterback situation in New York, but he's going to come in and apparently be the primary backup to Dallas Goedert. I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't go ahead and draft that replacement for Dallas Goedert, which they did not do over the weekend. Kyle, what do you stand on this? Is this just another body filler move for you, or do you expect anything from this guy?
Yeah, it was almost a depth piece, I think. I did like I liked when he was a Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. He did some pretty good things up there, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly. With the Jets, yeah, obviously nothing. You can't really glean anything from the Jets stint because Zach Wilson was the quarterback. But I don't know. I think he's sort of one of those really low risk, high reward type moves. I was kind of surprised they didn't address the tight end as earlier than they did. This was right around the age that Zach Ertz was when they,
Yeah.
brought in Dallas Goedert. So you have to think that a similar move like that is coming soon. Obviously not coming this draft, but yeah, you hope that Uzama can step right into that tight end 2 role because apparently Kellen Moore liked to use a lot of two tight end sets in his time.
Yep. No, I agree. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out because Dallas Goedert has demonstrated over the past few seasons that his durability is definitely under some sort of suspect. But we'll wait and see. All right, Kyle, let's move on to the draft because this was the next latest, greatest, most important Eagle draft in history, right? This was it. This was the one everybody was pointing to this year. And then, of course, we'll do that again. We'll do all this dancing next year.
Always is,
yep. Always is. So the Eagles started out this draft picking at number 22, and as we got closer to number 22, a couple things happened in this draft that were a little bit off script. 6 quarterbacks went in the first round.
Yeah.
Or 5 or 6. Yeah, 6 went in the first round. And the defensive, I think the first defensive player didn't go to like 14 or so in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of set things up for the Eagles, who there was a lot of questioning of whether or not we were going to go defense or we were going to go offensive tackle. But the answer or the question was answered in the form of Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from the powerhouse MAC and Toledo. Apparently he graded out as the best athletic, at least best cornerback in this draft. But just 2 picks later, Kyle Quinn, another cornerback who's coming from a pro program like the Alabama Crimson Tide, was selected by the host city Detroit Lions, Terrion Arnold. He was sitting there for the Eagles to take, but the Eagles decided to go to Quinyon Mitchell. Some of his strengths, he plays a lot of zone. Not much press man to man. The zone defense fits Vic Fangio. What do you think about the selection of Quinyon Mitchell at 22?
Yeah, well, obviously remains to be seen whether him or Arnold is the better quarterback. The Eagles drafted him believing that he was the number 1 corner in the draft, and they didn't have to move up to get him, which is good. I know he played at Toledo, which not a lot of people are in love with the idea that he didn't go to Bama and he went to Toledo. But Sauce Gardner went to Cincinnati. He's a great corner. I know everyone's excited about Isaiah Rodgers. I forget where he went. He went to a really small school too. I mean, you got corners out there that went to freaking Abilene Christian or something, and they're good. So I'm not really sure it makes a whole lot of difference. I know that he was lining up against all the top receivers at the Senior Bowl, and that really impressed the Eagles. So that does remain to be seen, but you almost have to sort of add to that the fact that they might have gotten the other top 4 corner in the draft in the second round.
Yeah, that's a good point, and obviously we didn't know that until then. But I don't know, Kyle. This smells and smacks a little bit like Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson to me right now. Just in the terms of the bigger school, the bigger program, the pro program, how he allegedly fixed all that after the Jalen Reagor debacle with picking players from Bama and Georgia exclusively in the draft after that, it seemed like. But here he goes back to his old ways. So you don't feel that this is a Howie, I'm the smartest man in the room type move here, or is this Howie, I did my homework type of a move?
No, I honestly think this came a lot down to what the evaluation was from Fangio, the scouts, guys like that. I think a lot of this is, I don't know if it was ever always Howie just smartest guy in the room. I think it always just goes with who he thinks the best player. And sometimes it's idiotic, right? Sometimes it's not. We'll see if this one remains to be seen. But I know the Toledo thing's sort of hanging with everybody. But like I said, I think a lot of times people overthink sometimes where guys went to school. And I think this might be one of those cases.
We took Westbrook and he went to Nova, so it worked out pretty well. I agree. You're absolutely right. You do. But when you're talking a position of dire need, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell needs to be a day 1 starter. Do you not agree?
Oh, I totally agree. No, he has to. If he's not, then it's already, you're already kind of starting to look at it as a failure.
Yeah. All right. Then the Eagles, that was it for the first round. But the Eagles were picking somewhat close together in the second round at 50 and 53. But Howie said, hold my beer, and coordinated the first of, it seemed like about a billion trades that he made over the weekend, moving all the way up to, I believe, 40 it was in the second round, 40th overall for the second round.
Yep.
And selecting Cooper DeJean, the defensive back. He's not, don't call him a cornerback. Don't call him safety. Let's call him a DB from Iowa. This is a no-brainer here for me. This is a home run. This is a potential, this could be another, I'm not going to say Brian Dawkins, but this could be another one of those type situations. This kid's got it all. Really like this move for him. Where do we see Cooper DeJean in this defense? Do we see him in the safety position? Do we see him in a slot corner position? Where does Kyle Quinn see him playing?
That's a tough question because they have like 11 corners, I think, at this point, like on the roster.
Yeah.
And, if you want to count some of the guys that are there as safeties, Blankenship, Vontae Maddox can kind of play safety too. And then, you have, I don't know. I mean, a couple of these guys are going to have to be odd man out. I mean, you'd hope that one of them's James Bradbury. But then what do you do with Isaiah Rodgers? Vontae Maddox could end up being a cut. You don't know. But really, it's looking like I'd have to say the secondary is shaping up to be Gardner Johnson, maybe DeJean, Maddox, Rodgers, Slay, Maddox. I'm not sure.
What about Ringo and Ricks? Where do they fit in here? What about Ringo and Ricks? Where do they fit in?
Yeah, Ringo and Ricks, exactly right. And I think Ricks is a special teams guy. So, it's all a lot of it might actually come down to who's playing the best special teams for some of the more depth spots on there. But you hope that it's Mitchell, Slay, Rodgers as the nickel, possibly. I don't know. And then maybe DeJean and Gardner Johnson as your safeties. I think that's probably best case scenario that everybody pans out. But yeah, it's only a few spots and a lot of guys, so it'll be good competition. Which is
it's going to be really good to see it. And then Howie was not done, as I said. That was the only second round pick. Then there was another series of trades. We were moving up and down all over the place. Howie's trying to recoup some picks for 2025, I believe, heading into this draft. We only had 5 picks for next year, but I think we come out of this with 8 or 9, which I got to give Howie a lot of credit for there as well. It's always about replenishing for the future. And I think through all intelligence that I've gathered, next year's class is probably going to be one of those for the ages type moves.
Nice.
But the Eagles selected again in the third round, 94th overall. You know what, Kyle, that barn burning program out there in Houston, Christian defensive edge rusher Jalix Hunt, Kyle Quinn. And I think everybody had the same reaction to Jalix Hunt was who? It's come out now that Vic Fangio loves this guy, that this is a Vic Fangio guy. Don't really know what that means. And is Vic Fangio going to be here for 20 years to make sure his guy is used correctly? I don't know. But Kyle, is this a reach here?
It could be. He's kind of like a project defensive end type guy. You definitely don't expect him to come out and be ready in a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know. It does have a little bit of those Davion Taylor vibes.
Oh,
yeah. Grades out, tests out well, really athletically. They get him in the third round, and he's kind of ends up just being nothing. But I do like that as a spot where the Eagles can take a big swing on. Obviously, if Vic Fangio likes him and he turns out to be something, then he's a guy similar to, the opposite side of the Davion Taylor thing is like the Josh Sweat side, where they got a guy who tests out really well, very athletic, falls a little bit in the draft, and he turns out to be good for him. So all that remains to be seen. It's just going to be a matter of whether they can develop him or not.
Yeah, and I honestly, Kyle, with all the problems this defense had at the back end of 2023 and into the playoffs, I really was expecting, and maybe this is more of a MattyB problem. Maybe this is something I have to work out. But I was expecting day one, I don't want to use the word starter, but day one contributors. And I don't see Jalix Hunt being a day one contributor in another high priority position of need, edge rushing on this football team.
Yeah, well, I think expecting a day one starter out of the third round pick is asking a little bit too much.
I said contributor, not starter.
Yeah, no, I still think that's asking a lot. I mean, those guys are very 50-50.
I disagree. But, when you run a rotational type style of defense, Jalix Hunt is going to see time. And especially if somebody goes down, we don't know You know, Jalen Carter, what happened to him last year? Nolan Smith, you mentioned him. He was a non-factor. I mean, there's no the safety net for Nolan Smith better not be Jalix Hunt. That's my point here, is that we need to have players, in my opinion, and maybe Jalix Hunt 2-3 years from now is that guy. But coming in day one, he needs to be able to contribute, or another player should have been brought in here, maybe through free agency, that can contribute. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that he's not a good depth move or a good depth piece for later on down the line, but as you mentioned, this is a team that thinks they're going to win a Super Bowl next year. I don't know if Jalix Hunt is the guy that's going to lead you there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know who in the third round you expect that is going to lead you there. I'll say this: like they'll have Smith, Sweat, Huff, and Brandon Graham. So Jalix Hunt getting on the field is going to be a little bit of a difficult ask. I don't think he's going to see much time, especially if not too many people are getting injured. So I wouldn't expect too much out of him day one, and I just don't really ever usually expect that much out of third round picks to be contributors in an impactful way in the first year. It's just pretty rare.
What was your take on the contributor factor of Nakobe Dean day one?
Yeah, it wasn't much.
I mean, no, I know it wasn't much, but what did you think he was going to provide?
I probably at the time I thought he would contribute a little bit more, but
which he was a third round draft pick.
Yes,
I'm just saying it's tomatoes here, Kyle. I get what you're saying.
No, but the point is that, like, I think I had to adjust my expectations after seeing.
I never do that
in years past. That it's not often that a third round guy is contributing right away. So,
yeah. Well, again, I said I did use the little caveat by saying maybe it wasn't in the draft that we should have found an edge rusher in the third round. Perhaps that should have been in free agency, and then maybe another position of need that we had a little bit more time with. Yeah, could have been where you took the third round pick.
We also could have kept this on Reddick, and we wouldn't have to worry about a defensive
absolutely
end.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Absolutely, Kyle Quinn. Touche, Kyle Quinn. I missed this back and forth. All right, Eagles would then pick again in the fourth round. This time they would return to the power conferences in the ACC and take a running back from Clemson in the form of Will Shipley, who's been compared to the poor man's Christian McCaffrey. I don't really poor Will Shipley. I mean, I don't know if it's cool to be comped to Christian McCaffrey in any way. Where do you see this? This is just kind of coming off that Jalix Hunt move. This really didn't send Eagle Nation back into a sense of confidence for the Eagles in their draft.
No, well, again, it's a fourth round pick, and people sitting there expecting to be inspired by some guy that they get in the fourth round. I think are crazy. It's a good pick. I think I wanted the Eagles to draft a running back after signing Saquon Barkley for a while. I'm not in love with Kenny Gainwell. I think that's always a position where you try to restock, replenish, see what you can get out of some young guys. So I don't know too much about Will Shipley, but hopefully if he can impress and he'll be able to get on the field, and who knows what happens in a year or so, or if Saquon's injured, I don't know. But I like the idea of taking a running back mid-round.
And on to the fifth round, where the Eagles address potentially their slot receiver situation with Anais Smith out of Texas A&M, not Texas Tech. I've actually watched him play. I think he will be very productive in that position. I like this move. This was a position of not necessarily need for the Eagles, but this is one of those positions where you can groom a kid, and I think he's the perfect candidate for this.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I would argue that wide receiver is a little bit more of a position need than some people think. I mean, just think about the fact that if A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith get injured for extended time this season, then who are you left with? Probably not too confident in that group. So I think that's another area where they could also use another body. And Mims is a guy that is probably going to challenge Britton Covey a little bit for the kick punt return job.
Absolutely. I do like this. And then the last player that we're going to spend significant time or any time really talking about on a one-on-one basis is the player the Eagles took in the fifth round at 155 from Clemson, Mr. Shipley's teammate, and a legacy. Mr. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Is now a Philadelphia Eagle. Kyle, I think this is another one of those cases that we're going to confuse what do they say? The sins of the father are not the sons, or the sins of the sons. And I think that's what we're doing here. And I don't know what people are expecting from this kid. He's not his dad. And I'm not saying they can't be, but I think we're setting this kid up for some major failure here by bringing him in with all these comps, basically.
No, I would have to disagree. I mean, it's not like we're drafting him in the first round and expecting him to be Jeremiah Trotter. I mean, he's a fifth-round pick,
Okay.
right? So I think the fact that he is Jeremiah Trotter's son, then he gets a little bit more of a leash from fans than otherwise. And like I said, the fact that he's not a first-round pick, it's not like everyone's expecting him to come in and contribute right away. So I don't think anyone's setting him up for failure just because the expectations aren't going to be too high. I think it's just sort of a good story. Very high reward type deal again. He's definitely a different player than his dad. Like he's not like, go meet you in between two offensive linemen and smack you right in the face type of guy. He's a little smaller. And he runs around a little bit more. So I don't know. I like the idea that it's Jeremiah Trotter's son. He knows what it is to play in Philadelphia. He knows what it is to be an Eagle. He grew up with that. So, who knows? Maybe it's going to be something that pays off for them in the future.
Maybe it is. And again, another one of those players that are not necessarily brought here for today, which confuses me because we're trying to win a Super Bowl today. Now the Eagles would finish it up with the last three picks of the draft. Trevor Keegan, an offensive guard from Michigan, Johnny Wilson, a wide receiver from Florida State, and Dylan McCann, a offensive guard from NC State. Eagles seemingly addressing the offensive line in the future and then adding another depth piece there at wide receiver. Kyle Quinn, giving you the A through E or A through F grading scale on paper right now in, not even 24 hours after, or over 24 hours after the draft completed. What are you giving Howie here?
Well, I'll say this. I was ecstatic that they didn't waste a first-round pick on an offensive lineman or a guy that was going to be a depth offensive tackle. So I love the fact that they got a cornerback, the number one corner in the draft, according to their evaluations, and how the board fell. Defense fell right to them. I love that. Love the fact that they moved up and got Cooper DeJean. I mean, we'll see whether these guys pan out or not, but I do love the fact that how he was aggressive and he read the market correctly. I think the other thing I'll say about the DeJean move is that he predicted, and correctly, I think it was like a run of 4 or 5 cornerbacks being selected right after he took Cooper DeJean. So he got out right in front of a big run on other teams that were probably going to take Cooper DeJean. He went and got his guy. Love the fact that he got his guy. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of guys that are kind of just, we'll see, Hunt, Shipley, etc. So I'll give it a B. I can't give it an A just because I'm not crazy about some of the mid to late round guys. Nothing popping out at me too much, but I do love the fact they heavily addressed the position in need, and I think he read the market correctly in the draft. So I'll give him a B on it.
You're gonna give him a B, huh? I'm gonna give him a C minus. That for no other reason, Kyle, than not drafting Arnold ahead of Mitchell. I'm sorry, I think that's going to come back and bite him. Anyway, not to say that Quinion Mitchell is not a good player. I just think that.
I don't know. I don't get too caught up in like my evaluation of this corner versus the other corner. Like I just think that there's a lot to like that I don't know in terms of evaluating a corner that NFL scouts do.
No, absolutely.
That you can be wrong or I could be wrong or whatever. Right. I think just the way that I'm looking at it is they got their number one corner on the board, and I think that's a success for me. So.
Yeah, no. But one thing that did concern me over the weekend, I heard this a lot, that this was, especially referred to all the defensive players, this was a Vic Fangio guy. This is what I kept hearing over and over and over again. And that does concern me, Kyle, because I don't know how long Vic Fangio is going to be here. This could all blow up, and by November we could be talking about Sirianni out of here and maybe Fangio's the head coach. I don't know, but I don't necessarily like him rebuilding a defense. Not necessarily building it around his scheme, because we do need athletes that can be put in other schemes. Maybe I'm taking too much into that, but I don't know. It concerned me a little bit, the amount of times I heard that.
I can understand that. I think to your point, I think the Eagles are putting a lot of eggs in the Vic Fangio basket. I think the way that they're setting the team up this year is they're going to win with offense, and they're hoping that Vic Fangio can just do a little bit better of a job with the talent that they have on defense than they did last year and make it a good enough one to win. But, we'll see.
We heard that last year. Well. Yep. Yeah, we heard that last year. Same thing, obviously, with the Sean Desai debacle.
Yeah,
all right.
Sean Desai is not a veteran, experienced defensive coordinator like Fangio is. I think
No, he's not.
That's where the difference comes in.
Yeah, we'll see. We can't do nothing about that. The Eagles weren't done, of course, because then we had the UDFA period, which the Eagles signed a few players. Goltib Aziz, an offensive lineman from Maryland. Amin Dankawa, an offensive tackle from Howard. Andre Sam, the safety from LSU. Kendall Milton, running back from Georgia. Gabe Hall, defensive tackle from Baylor. McCallan Castles, a tight end from Tennessee. Maybe that's the actual parent to Dallas Clark. Dallas Goddard. Dallas Clark was back there in the 80s with the Colts. Kyle, we've closed the books on the draft, and again, now it's all about seeing how these players mesh in with the Eagles, how the Eagles are going to use them, and how Vic Fangio and how Nick Sirianni and all that's going to pan itself out. One last player thing, Kyle, then we'll wrap this up. The Eagles did make some signings over the free agency period. They brought back some of their own, and let's talk a little bit about them. Jordan Mailata, a 3-year contract extension, no brainer here, Kyle Quinn. Would you not agree?
Oh yeah, no. He's the left tackle of the future. He became everything they wanted him to be. And when you have a guy at that important position, you lock him down right away. So,
yeah. Braden Mann, Kyle. I mean, I was hoping for an Aaron Sipos reunion, but Braden Mann, a 2-year contract extension from the Eagles. He looks like your dad's poker buddy, but I guess they saw enough out of him. I don't know, Kyle. He did okay, right?
Yeah. I mean, he was better than Sipos. That's not saying a whole lot, but he was decent.
Yeah. Albert Okawig, man, you know who I'm talking about, the tight end. Yeah. He was brought back on a 1-year deal. And then the two most significant re-signings, and we'll end it on this. Devontae Smith, a 3-year contract extension, and not to be one-upped by Devontae Smith. Right before the draft started the other night, the Eagles announced that they had locked down A.J. Brown to a 3-year contract extension as well. Kyle, I can kind of understand the Devontae Smith deal, obviously, more than I can understand the A.J. Brown deal for these reasons. Obviously, Devontae's a younger player. I don't think Devontae and A.J. Brown are comparable as wide receivers. They're two different type of receiver. But when you're looking at Devontae, he just makes more sense to get him locked down before we have to deal with any kind of 5th-year option and trying to negotiate our way through that. A.J. Brown's got 2 years or had 2 years remaining on his current deal. He was a major distraction inside the locker room at the end of last season, and he's not a leader, and he's not. I heard somebody call him AJ Owens, is what they're calling him now. So what? I don't understand. I'm not on board with the AJ. I almost call him AJ Owens. I'm not on board with the AJ Brown move at all, but I am definitely on board with Devontae Smith.
So, I mean, we don't know that A.J. Brown was a distraction in the locker room at the end of the season. I think that's just been a lot of fan speculation. I think the fact that they signed him almost suggests that he's not viewed in that way in the locker room that a lot of fans, I think, mistakenly are. I'll say this is why I think it's the best reason to sign A.J. Brown right now, because Justin Jefferson's about to get paid. Jamar Chase is about to get paid. A.J. Brown is on those guys' level. As much as you want to say about him being a leader, he's one of the best receivers in football, and getting out ahead of all of those contracts in the wide receiver market that's just going to keep blowing up is the smartest thing to do, because now in 2 years, A.J. Brown's money is going to look small compared to a lot of those guys that are getting paid. CeeDee Lamb also has to get paid. It's about to get crazy. So this was the best possible time to get in front of all that.
So I'm looking at this more on the intangible side. And if you're saying, you're right, there is no evidence that we know of, and even though there's been numerous, or at least one locker room leak that I know of that has come out and basically said as much, that A.J. Brown was a huge distraction and a huge diva at one point. We've seen evidence on it on the sidelines before. I brought it up on our program before. I think what that provides, what that could mean for this team right now that doesn't have strong leaders, that doesn't have a strong leader and a head coach, I think that could spell disaster if the wheels begin to wobble. I think A.J. Brown will do his part in kicking them completely off. I don't like the character that he brings. You're right. The skill is there. But there's only one football out there, Kyle Quinn, and now we're going to be running the ball with Saquon Barkley more, allegedly. We still got to feed Devontae Smith. Dallas Goddard has got to get his take, and now A.J. Brown still has to get his. I'm just saying, this could be a lethal cocktail, Kyle, if I'm right and you're wrong.
Well, yeah, I know, I totally agree with with if you turn out to be right, whatever. I don't think you are. Like, I got to be honest with
Of
you.
course
Like,
you don't. No non-rational Eagle fan does think I'm right. Apparently, yeah. No,
no,
you're right.
I mean, wouldn't Howie Roseman and the Eagles know if he's a problem?
Listen. I think they do know. Obviously, they
Okay,
do.
well
But
then
obviously, it's
why are they giving him 5 more years?
because of his talent level.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously.
But I think if they really thought that it could be something where the wheels could fall off, quote unquote, to use your terms, and he kicks them off, that's not something they're looking to do.
Well, we've seen it kind of happen last year. We did.
Yeah. But they
We
also just
did.
made the investment in their quarterback. And if there's something going on, like you're insinuating between the quarterback and the wide receiver, then you don't make this kind of move.
Well, I'm insinuating that I'm not necessarily insinuating that. I'm insinuating that if AJ Brown doesn't get his for whatever reason that might be, a personal reason between him and Jalen Hurts or whatever, I don't know. The scheme, the plays aren't going his way. If he doesn't get his, and again, there's only one football that they can pass around. I'm not, and then if he doesn't get his and they're still winning, probably no issues. But if he doesn't get his and they're losing, Kyle, that's when it's going to get bad. I think.
I just think that's a little bit overblown.
Yeah, I disagree. But we'll be doing a lot of that, disagreeing to agree or agreeing to disagree. But Kyle, the important thing is we're back together for the 5th season of this format. It's only our 2nd year doing it here, but we've done it before. 5 years now, Kyle. We are one step closer. The next time we'll come together, Kyle Quinn, will be at the end of August when we talk about the Eagle and the rest of the NFL season, the schedule. We'll do our predictions. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to leave you with this, Kyle Quinn, before I let you go. Where can the folks find you out there?
So every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, 94 WIP. And then, of course, on Twitter at Kyle_Quinn, WIP.
All right, my brother. We will talk again in August, man.
All right, Matt. Appreciate you having me on, buddy. Thanks.
Yep. All right, that was Kyle Quinn and the Birds Blast here on Talking Philly Sports with MattyB. And now back to the host with the most, MattyB. All right, that was Kyle Quinn and me yesterday talking it up a little bit of the kind of giving our assessment of the draft and of free agency. And there you go. There's my take on it all, right? It's not as negative downer, Debbie Downer as many of you out there might think it is, right? I honestly believe that in a lot of these moves, they were the right position in the draft, but I'm not sure of the player. But how are we ever sure of the players that are drafted? So all we can do is look back on history and the trends of what has already happened on this team. And before I get into that, because I want to bring up an interesting point here, and remind everybody out there that segment on the program was brought to you by the great folks at Sherry's Ticket Town. Great prices, no hidden fees on sports, concert, theater tickets, www.sherrystickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter that promo code EOP10. All right. So as I said, the drafting, right? So I keep track of this stuff because I have nothing else better to do with my time. So Howie Roseman, essentially since 2016, has been in charge completely of the Eagles drafts, right? I'm not going to give him credit for anything prior to 2016 because it's unfair. Because he wasn't in charge. He might have been part of it. He might have been the face or whatever, but he wasn't actually making picks. There's no way Andy Reid, at that time of his tenure here in the city, was letting Howie Roseman make draft picks for him. And then obviously we already knew the relationship that Chip Kelly and Howie had. So since 2016, Howie Roseman has been the man behind the plan. And that's been 9 drafts. And in those 9 drafts, he's drafted 66 players. And out of those 66 players, 31 of them are still on the team, right? Now, out of those 66 players, currently 18 players, out of those 31 players that are still on the team, not 66, but 31. Out of those 31 players, 18 of them are still unknown or have not been determined whether or not they are hits or they're busts. There are question marks, and to include the 9 players that we added over the weekend. So 18 players out of 31 are unknown whether or not they're going to work out or not for this football team. That's a very high number of players for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And that's really all I'm trying to get at here. Is I'm not trying to say that Howie Roseman completely submarined this draft. I'm not. And nor am I saying that he submarined any of the drafts that he's been involved in purposely. But let the numbers speak for themselves here, right? We are a team, as I mentioned in the little segment there, that wants to win a Super Bowl this year. But yet we have a lot of picks from this draft right now that we're saying, oh, well, give him a couple years, or he's raw, or we got to figure out what he has, or let him work his way under Brandon Graham or work his way under whoever to kind of figure themselves out. That's a lot of players, and then you couple them with the other players on this team over the last few drafts that have been drafted that have not yet panned out, that may or may not still pan out, that are still finding themselves. That's an awful lot of number of players for a team that's a Super Bowl contender. That's what I don't understand. That's the major issue that I'm having. Not that the fact that Howie Roseman can't draft. Well, I don't think he can. But that's the issue. For a team that has lofty aspirations, that goes into a season thinking they're going to win a Super Bowl, when they have such a high number of players that have not been figured out yet. And then our free agents that we've brought in have been pretty good. But they're one level of this. They're one level of a 53-man roster. And the others that are backing them up, or the others that are also seeking significant time, have yet to be proven. That's all I'm trying to say. And this blind allegiance to this GM, who, and let me bring up some of the comments. Listen, these comments came through. Wasn't gonna put them up because this was a pre-recorded segment, but I'm live. Daniel Berry says, "Hey, happy Monday." There you go, Quentin. If Howie isn't doing a good job, which GM would you say is doing it better over the past 7 years? Well, I'll give you one, Quentin, and this is not a reach. This is a Veach. Brett Veach of the Super Bowl dynasty Kansas City Chiefs is doing a good job as a GM. Do I need to go any further? I would say he's doing a better job than Howie Roseman, right? I mean, is that something that you would agree with? I hope you would. K1 says CJ wanted more money than he was worth. He dope. Maybe he's referring to me. I realize that. Did I not say in the little segment that I thought it was a good move to bring him back? I mean, come on. Don't come at me just to come at me because you don't agree with me. Come at me with something solid here, and I'll debate you. And I will never censor anybody. But that's all I'm trying to get at. This blind allegiance for a man that has delivered a Super Bowl. He fell ass backwards into that. He caught lightning in the bottle. Delivered a Super Bowl, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 7 years ago. Going on 7 years. And you're asking me what GM has done better? Well, I would say the guy in Kansas City has. Pretty much hands down. But yeah, we're still going to sit here and give Howie the benefit of the doubt when the philosophy that he carries with this football team year after year is a loser philosophy. He builds it up yearly, and he strips it down yearly. And we're going to try to catch lightning in the bottle? Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to catch lightning in the bottle. Why aren't we building a sustained winner? We have 18 players out of 33, I believe is the number, of the 33 draft picks that Howie has made on this throughout his tenure. 18 of them currently the verdict is still out. The verdict is still out on whether or not they are actually busts or hits. 18 of 33. And you're jumping down my throat. The numbers are there. It's not me making this up. Support the team any which way you feel like you need to support them. But for Christ's sake, be legitimate and be honest with yourselves. Try to stay somewhat impartial. Stop following this guy blindly down the path without any sort of tangible results. They were 10-1 last year. But what did we say during that 10-1 time frame? They can't blow everybody out. They're going to get a clunker every now and again, but they're finding ways to win. Then they fell apart at the end of the season. Why? We still don't know why. No one answers the question. What do we do to fix that? Well, we brought back the same head coach. Right? We're going to change offensive, defensive coordinators again. We're going to give Jalen Hurts his fourth offensive coordinator in 5 years. He's been here. I think he bounced around with a bunch of different coordinators as a college player, too. We're going to provide all that instability to a quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who really, in my opinion, does not really thrive in an unstable environment. But we're gonna keep doing that to him. We're gonna strip down the roster year to year, and hope to God we're catching lightning in the bottle. And we're gonna draft year to year with 18 players currently still sitting and haven't really panned out yet. Now, granted, 9 of those 18 are current, new Eagles. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the numbers. All right. I think Howie Roseman is a fraud. I think he's a snake oil salesman. I think you people out there that follow him blindly need to get your heads checked. I really do. He is nothing special. What did he do special in this draft? The board broke his way, right? He didn't make any in the first round, per se. And in the first round, don't tell me that you're not feeling a little about Quinion Mitchell when you had a guy from Alabama sitting there too. And don't tell me you didn't have Jalen Reagor PTSD when that pick was made. Because you're lying to yourself. And you're lying to me. Now, maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. We'll have to wait and see. But can we really afford another first-round bust? I mean, can we? For a team that wants to win a Super Bowl right now? All I'm asking is to stop making excuses for this guy and give him a fair evaluation. That's all I'm asking. I'm asking for some impartiality when it comes to Howie Roseman. Because to me, he hasn't done anything. You throw the Super Bowl at me all you want. I mean, was anybody prepared for a Super Bowl in 2017? Howie got lucky. He did a great job. He pressed all the right buttons. But that was it. He couldn't press them again. And he hasn't been able to press them again since. And don't give me the all the regular season wins and the Super Bowl appearance and Super Bowl 57. Don't give me all that because they failed to do what they were supposed to do, and that was win. I'm just saying. Does it really matter whether or not we lose in a Super Bowl or you're the Jacksonville Jaguars? At the end of the day, you both lost. I mean, where's the difference there? So yeah, you can hold on to the fact that we're a great regular season team under Howie Roseman, and we've gone to the playoffs for whatever many years it's been since the Super Bowl year under Howie Roseman. You can hold on to all that. That's fine. But that's not what I want to hold on to. I want to hold on to the friggin' Lombardi Trophy. And I want to be like the Kansas City Chiefs. And I want to be a dynasty. And that's never, ever going to happen with this fraud here. And that's all I'm trying to say. And I got to be the yin to the yang. I'm sorry. That's my station in life, and that's fine. I will do that. I will do that 100%. Absolutely. But anyway, that's my little bit on Howie and the Eagles as the draft has been completed. The Eagles are going to roll the dice again in 2024. Thank you, Kyle Quinn, for coming on and renewing our Birds Blast ties as we get ready for a great coming season as well. Let's transition because we're way over time to the Philadelphia Phillies right now. 19-10, going to wrap up their April out there on the left coast against the Anaheim. Don't call them that. The Los Angeles Angels tonight. Christopher Sanchez, and a surprising move actually, if you ask me. I thought Turnbull was going to get the nod tonight, but Sanchez gets it, and he's going to be opposed out there at 9:38 on the left coast by Griffin Channing. And they're going to do battle around 9:30. Now, Channing comes into this game boasting a 7.50 ERA. That's right, folks. Do we make Griffin Channing into Tom Glavine tonight? Let's hope not. Let's hope that our recent hot streak and our recent good play continues tonight as we should smack around this guy. But there is one player, and again, let me remind everybody that the Fighting's Final does have you covered through that show, through this series, and yours truly will be back at it here later, a little bit later tonight, pulling double duty, and I'll be hosting the Fighting's Final. But one player that I'm, of course, going to be keeping an eye on is Mr. Logan O'Hoppe. For those of you that don't know, I am a huge Logan O'Hoppe fan, and I was really upset when they traded him. I really thought we were we made a major mistake there in getting rid of him. Heading into this game right now, Hoppy kind of had a really good season last year in April, and then he messed up his labrum, I believe, tore his labrum, and then went out for the rest of the season. Has come back this year, and is currently leading the Angels. Where is this thing here? Where I just had it up and I lost it. He's got I believe, 293 batting average. He's got the best batting average on the Angels. To me, I think honestly, he is. I would have loved to have him here. But yeah, he's batting 280, or he's batting 293 overall this season. Just 2 home runs, 9 RBIs. Kind of still, maybe, I guess, kind of getting his swing down. He's got a 7.87 on base percentage. I really like what Logan O'Hoppe brings, and I'm going to be watching him. Unfortunately, of course, I don't have much. I don't really care to watch them, but when they're playing the Phillies, I will. But Logan O'Hoppe will be at it this weekend against the BCIB, his heir apparent there, JT Realmuto, and the rest of the Phillies, as they try to wrap up the month of April on a positive note and wrap up this West Coast trip here on a positive note. Some of the notable Phillies of late, of course, are Alec Boehm, tearing it up, has had an amazing month of April. Trey Turner rebounded from a slow start and has begun to really hit. Then Bryson Stott yesterday with the 2 home run day, maybe hopefully breaking out of his season-long slump. And then, of course, there's the Nick Castellanos. How much longer are we going to kind of go with Nick here? How much longer can we go with Nick? I guess everything is masked a little bit as long as they're winning. But when they start losing and then Nick is still struggling, how much longer are we gonna go with Nick here before a move is made? At least to sit him down for a game or two. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But to Rob Thompson's benefit here, he keeps running him out there, hopefully to try to break him out of this slump. But it's becoming a major concern here because he doesn't seem to be getting out of the slump. Kyle Schwarber has kind of weeded his way back down, the Kyle Schwarber stuff. Still leading off, of course, and batting below 200. So, but all in all, as the Phillies get ready to start April or May, which, of course, as we all know here, is really the month that a lot of us, especially I, keep an eye on, because the Phillies have been god-awful over the last couple Mays. And it is April, right? I mean, you guys realize it's not September, right? I mean, they're off to a great start, which bodes well for the fact that we want to win the NL East. And now we're within that shouting distance of the Braves, who, even though they've lost Spencer Strider for the season, they lost Albanese for a little while, they still continue to win. And they're doing it well. But they're still in first place, but only about a game or half or 2 games over the Phillies. So we're keeping them in our direct sight, which is good, as I think this team should go for winning the division. But yeah, so far so good for the Phillies. And a little bit later tonight, you can come back here and watch me host the Fighting's Final, as I'll be doing it tonight and tomorrow night as I get late night duty. That's my reward for taking a vacation. So screw you, Al. But I happily do it. And don't forget that you need to clear your calendars for this date, May 25th, Dolan's Wiffle Ball Mania, their spring classic. John Kruk and Mickey Morandini will be on hand to assist everybody as we, if you've never been to one of these, it's pretty fun. I'm not going to say it's family friendly. I mean, there's a lot of 4-letter expletives being used during this thing, and there is alcohol there. But I mean, if anything, bring them out to meet John Kruk and Mickey Morandini. So May 25th is the Wiffle Ball Mania down there at Dolan. So make sure you're there, and who knows, you might see yours truly in attendance as well. So let's head into the last segment of the night, the Flyers, and we'll wrap this show up. It was a good one tonight, but Flyers are now, headstrong into their offseason. They've had their exit interviews. The coaches have talked. The GM has spoken. Some of the things Danny Barrera mentioned might not keep or be encouraging to a lot of Flyer fans as we enter now into year 2 of the rebuild. There's really not much he said in that exit press conference that smacks we're all in for next year. It's pretty much, we're going to stay the course. We don't expect any high-priced free agents to come in here. Again, the Flyers are still working their way out of some salary cap issues themselves. He was open for business for trades. He is going to sign free agents, and they're going to put, once again, a lot of stock into the NHL draft, which will be on June 28th and June 29th. And the Flyers do have 2 first-round picks. And of course, and if you haven't noticed on EOP's social media sites and on our website as well, we're heavily promoting that draft. We're starting to take a deep look at some of the players that are going to be available in that draft, because we're going to be covering that draft. We're going to be covering round 1 of the NHL draft on June 28th live. We're thinking about doing it in studio, but we're going to cover it in some way or form. We're going to take you through the first round, talk about some of the players that have been drafted by other teams, kind of do, some of the stuff that the NFL guys did over the weekend, try to mirror that a little bit. I mean, that was an outstanding job that they did, a bunch of homers, but they did a great job with it. And we're going to do that for the NHL draft here on June 28th. And then later this summer on July 14th, I believe, we're also going to do the same thing for the MLB draft. We're going to take you through round 1. Again, if you haven't noticed, we're dropping a lot of articles on MLB draft prospects. So make sure you're on the keeping an eye out for that. That's going to be coming up real soon. But as far as the Flyers go, Fedotov has been offered his second contract extension. So and Dan Breer said it as much. We're going to pretty much come back with a Sam Ersson Fedotov type tandem next year. That's kind of what they're saying now. Again, we got a long way to go between we get to next season, but that seems to be the route they're going to go. I don't necessarily think that they're going to go with that completely. They're going to have to bring in a veteran with a better pedigree than Cal Peterson, to potentially use if things do go off the rails a little bit for their goaltending. But there doesn't seem to be any kind of like indications that they're going to go out and sign a tiered goaltender. They like the youth. They like their prospects. They like the players they have in this system. There's a couple of guys that might push for some time in the minors next year. Sandstrom, of course, will be a free agent and probably won't be back. What does that mean for Carson Bjornsson? Does he make this step out of major junior Canadian hockey into professional hockey? I mean, he's been with Spokane there for like 4 years. Or I'm sorry, Brandon, the Wheat Kings, for like 4 years. So is he ready to come up and maybe sign his ELC, which he already has, but take his position with the Flyers somewhere in their organization? There's the other goalie out of Russia, Vorajin. He had an outstanding season last year. Does he get another year in the KHL? Probably. And then, of course, the Michkov stuff. The drama continues there, but maybe potentially getting him next season. I don't know. But nothing seems to be, right now at least from Danny B, seems to be different from how they approached year 1 as on how they're going to approach year 2. They're going to make they're going to be open for business for trades. They're going to put a lot of stock in the draft, and they probably will sign some lower level free agents, which worked out pretty well for the Flyers last year. So take for what you want from that. They don't seem to think they're in that window yet. I get that to a certain degree, but how much longer are we going to meddle? How much more patience are the Flyer fans going to give Danny B? This year went a long way. Making the playoffs this year would have went a real long way, but this year went a long way in kind of giving Danny that confidence and that patience. But how much more are we going to take before a significant step forward is needed? But more to follow on that. Of course, the Carter Hart situation is still up in the air. We don't know what's going on there. We'll definitely report when we hear anything about it. But so business is over for the Flyers, and as they transition to their offseason, and then, of course, the Phillies are going to wrap up their month out there in the left coast tonight. Christopher Sanchez against, what was his name again? Channing Griffin, bringing his 7.80 ERA to bear tonight against the Phillies. So make sure you're checking everything out. Make sure you're checking out all the great shows here on the Edge of Philly Sports. It's been a pleasure to come back with you guys again. It was a great vacation. I enjoyed myself, but it's time to get back to work, and I'm here for you. All I ask for, of course, is just a open debate, an open mind. No censorship is ever going to be happening on this show. I will never censor anybody on this show. I will never tell you your opinion is wrong. I'm never going to tell you it matters, but I'm not going to tell you it's wrong. Just bring it, bring it and we'll talk. But yeah, that's how I stand on a lot of that stuff. And we will talk again next week. And until we do, that is the news, and I'm out of here.